My guest this week on Media Makers has worked with both John Cena and SpongeBob SquarePants and lived to tell about it. I chat with Kristin Greco. She is a New England-based video editor, video producer, and creator of all things media. She has a podcast and so much more. We get into all that right now on Media Makers.
So fancy.
It is fancy, isn't it? It's cool. It's riverside.fm. That's the platform that we use. So
All right. I'm gonna throw it down.
it's kind of like Zoom, but like in their advertising, they say it's better than Zoom. I'm getting Facebook ads now, and I don't know why I still get the Facebook ads, even though I've already paid for the service.
Yeah.
But they'll send me Facebook ads that say, "Don't use Zoom for your recordings anymore. Use us." And I'm like, I already do.
I hate when I get Facebook ads on things I already bought. I'm like, you're trying to make me buy this again? I just bought it.
Well, Kristin, you and I worked together for like 6 or 7 months, but we'd never actually worked together on anything.
Yeah.
We were
I don't
in
even think
meetings
I
together. I'm sorry?
I don't even think I talked to you.
Yeah, it was like once or twice. It was like a, hey, how you doing? We had team meetings together, and then we were working on on different projects, but for the same company, and so our paths never really crossed. And before I got to know you, you were gone, and so I'm excited to get to talk to you tonight because I just want to learn more about you. We've been Facebook friends for a while, I think, since you were working with me, and so we've got to know each other that way a little bit, but never like face to face like this, even if it is across a couple thousand miles. But what is the media that you're making right now?
Oh boy, I'm making so much media that I can't even keep up with it. But this has been my life since I was like, I want to say 12. I always dive headfirst into projects, and then I'm like, wait, why am I doing so much at once? And then stuff gets thrown into the bucket, and then like 10 years later, I'll be like, oh, I was writing that thing. I should do that. But currently, currently I'm doing a podcast. Trying to write a children's show that I'm excited about. I'm writing 2 books, kind of going back and forth on that. A comic book I really want to write, and I think that's it. On top of work.
Goodness gracious, I had no idea. Your head is so full of ideas.
Yeah, that's the problem though. It's full of ideas, and then when it comes down to like actually sitting down and writing them out and like, developing them, that's when things are like, okay, well, I had a really great idea. How do I turn it into something that's more than an idea?
Yeah. Yeah, that's always the challenge.
It really is.
So you do a lot. I know you've done a lot on YouTube and things like that, but you mentioned when you were 12 and YouTube didn't exist when you were 12. So what was the thing that got you initially fired up to want to create something and put it out there for people to see?
Yeah, so when I was 12, my dad had this video like camcorder that it was like, the mini DV recorders, and I
Yeah.
stole it from him. I was like, this is mine now. And it was like a lot of just like recording with that. And finally he was like, you know what, I'll buy you one. You keep taking my camera, like here's your own camera. And from then it was just like I love stories. Storytelling has been my thing, asking my grandpa about his stories, and I just love listening to stories. So once I got my hands on my own video camera, I was like, I want to make stories. Like, who can I involve in all of this? So I called all my friends, especially my friend Alyssa, that poor girl, and I'd be like, hey, I'm going to just like film us doing stuff in the yard. Like, go jump into that bush, and then like I'll edit something, like I'll figure out how to edit something like an explosion or something. She's like, you don't know how to do that. I was like, I'll figure it out. So my first video editing software was Video Explosion and for the PC. Probably doesn't exist anymore. And I was like, how do I make this? And like you said, like YouTube wasn't really a huge thing then. I think it existed because this was 2006 is when I started my YouTube.
That was the year it launched. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it was like a bit before YouTube. So I didn't have tutorials on how to like edit. So I just kind of figured it out. I just like put things around and like splice things up, and eventually I learned how to edit just on my own with Video Explosion. And from there, it was like off to the races. I just wanted to make videos with my friends, and I didn't have anywhere to share them. I would literally put them on VHS tapes, and I would bring them to my friends' houses, which totally isn't a thing anymore. But I would bring them over and be like, look at, and we would even like record commercials off of the TV and put them into it. So it looked like we had our own TV shows. It was so fun.
That's great. It's kind of like on the Goldbergs. You watch that show where
No.
Adam he creates all the videos. It's set in the '80s, and it's this kid who is like wanted to be a filmmaker. It's a kind of a self autobiographical thing. But yeah, he kind of did the same thing on that show back in the '80s. But when I was a kid,
Cool.
I went over to my friend Ryan's house, and we would make music videos. Now this
Yes.
was like
Yep.
1991. I think I
Oh,
was
wow.
10 at the time.
Wow.
And so we had his dad had let us use the video camera, and it was one of those big ones that had the VHS
Oh,
tape that
yeah.
you dropped in there back in those days. And of course there was not even an internet back then for
Yeah.
us to show it off, but we would like put on music on the stereo and make music videos.
Oh, I love
And
that.
those tapes probably still exist, and they are incriminating, I think, at
That's what's
this point.
scary. Yeah, I'm like glad we didn't have TikTok and or any of the social media stuff that we have now. Imagine if
Yes.
we had that when we were kids. It would be it would be so bad. There'd be things out there
Yeah,
that I would never want anyone to see.
exactly. And I thank the Lord every day that that happened, because the worst thing about Facebook is the memories thing, because I'll go
Yes.
back and see just what I typed 12, 13
Yes.
years ago and go,
Yeah.
ugh,
Same.
what was that? And I'm
Same.
thinking,
Yeah.
if I had everything recorded that I did as a kid, and I would have been one of those. And I think anybody who's on this show with me would have been one of those people when we were
Absolutely.
kids. If we had that, it would still be out there, and it would be terrifying.
100%. And I tell my niece is 14, and I tell her like every day, I'm like, just whatever you put on the internet stays on the internet forever. Even if you
Yeah.
delete it, it's there and people are going to see it. So just be careful what you put on the internet. And, I would have been in the same boat.
Yeah, it terrifies me. Okay, you mentioned a podcast is something else you're doing, and I
Yes.
know a little bit about it, but tell me exactly what it's all about.
Yeah, it's a little explicit. So, but it's called Books
There's
and
nothing wrong with
Betches.
that. That's
Okay.
why Apple. That's why Apple has the content warning.
Exactly. I just learned that we had to like put it as explicit because we like swear. But yeah, it's called it's called Books and Betches. It's me, my friend Erica, and my friend Maria, and we just decided we all started reading books in quarantine. Did you start like doing things that you never thought you would in quarantine?
Yeah, yeah. Not
It's
reading. I'm not one of those people, but definitely I picked up on some new habits.
a lot of people did cooking. For some reason, I went to reading.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just like I read a bunch of books but I noticed as I was like reading, I didn't like post about it or anything, but my friend Maria was like posting a bunch about it. I was like, "Oh, she's reading." So we just kind of connected over it. And then I saw my friend Erica had read 200 books in like 5 months.
Whoa.
And I was like, "This is something." So I like reached out to her and I was like, "You're reading too many books, but we should talk about it." And then all of a sudden we were like, "Let's just start a podcast." We're three whippersnapper young ladies, and just we have a lot of fun. It's so fun. I love it. I imagine you're having a lot of fun too.
Oh yeah, I'm having a blast doing this kind of do-it-yourself broadcasting thing. I was on the radio for 20 years,
Yeah.
and I haven't been in, I guess, over 3 now. And so there's like this itch to want to just be behind a microphone, and I was like trying to find just the right project.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing now, I'm really having a blast doing it. I
That's
am.
awesome.
And the podcast thing is fun because even if nobody listens to it, it's still like a creative outlet, and you can put it out there, and
Exactly.
you'd be surprised. And I'm looking at my stats, and I don't obsess over them. I do, but I'll look at it and I'll see that somebody downloaded it in France or in England,
Yes. Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, either that's a VPN or that is strange to me that
Yeah.
someone has found this overseas and is listening to it.
We got an email that was like, "Congratulations, you're like number 27 in the Netherlands." And we were like,
Oh my
"Wait,
gosh.
what?" So, yeah, so we started like just being like, "Hey, if anyone's listening to this in the Netherlands, can you like let us know what's going on?" Because we don't know why. So apparently we're very popular in the Netherlands, so that's great.
So do you all read the same book and then talk about it together, or do you all just talk about what you're reading at that time?
It depends. So we do a different book every podcast, but they like romance. I'm not a big romance reader. I like Stephen King. I like the weird stuff.
Yeah.
So that like usually it'll be either two people or one person will have read the book and they'll just talk about it and we'll ask questions and we'll go through the plot. But occasionally, if there's a book that that everybody's talking about or recommends to us, all three of us will try to read it. And like usually it's like the worst book, and I get stuck reading it. I'm like, I just wasted a month reading this book, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, good. That's again. I think that's the most important thing is if you're having fun doing it. It's like my friend said. I think I talked about this with Justin Bradford on a previous episode. It's like, who cares what kind of content you're putting out? If people are listening to it and enjoying it, and you enjoy doing it, what does it matter? I mean, the internet is an infinite amount of storage. Who cares, right?
Exactly. And I liked what you said where you were just like if nobody watches it, at least like you're putting it out there. And it's so true. It's anything that I do, if I'm creating something, I'm happy. And if nobody reads it, nobody listens to it, like I did that for myself. And in 50 years from now, like that art and that work that I do is still going to exist. And if I have kids or grandkids, like they're going to get to see that. And like to me, that's way more valuable than anything anybody else seeing it is like it's almost like a diary, right? It's like it's documenting my life in a way. I just think that's the coolest thing.
And that's where I think for me the unfortunate thing is working in radio is it's not there for for saving because I set it on an open microphone and it went out over the airwaves, and we had software at the stations I worked at that would record what was on the air, but if I didn't go physically or even go download it or wherever off the server, then it was just lost forever. And so especially now that I'm 3 or 4 years removed from it, I'm like, I want to go back and hear some of it and critique myself and go, goodness gracious, or wow, that was really good, but I can't because it's just gone. And so
there's gotta be a way.
and so it's a little heartbreaking. It is. And so hey, at least the podcast will live forever, even if only on my Google Drive. But
true.
So talk to me about creating like things for YouTube. And I know I don't want to talk too much about what you're doing now professionally, but I know that you've done a lot of that in the past. And when you create a video for YouTube, and especially kind of anonymously, I think especially with you, because I know you've worked for some big name organizations, and you'll put it out there under that brand name, and millions of people will see it, and nobody knows who you are. And you put it together.
Yeah.
What is that like? What does that feel like? Is there pride or is there, man, I really wish my name was on the credits somewhere?
It's so funny. I made a YouTube video on my like main Miss Kristin Yo or whatever it's called. I don't even know. I made a channel called "I'm the biggest YouTuber with the least amount of subscribers." And it's funny. It's like all I do is create like my whole career. I started off at WWE, like in international. So it wasn't like anything for YouTube. It was like just traveling with the show and making shows that go international. But once I switched over to Up, Up, Down, Down, which is a YouTube channel, it's a gaming channel. Once I started working on that channel, it was like, okay, now I'm creating content for YouTube and it's getting a ton of views and like people are seeing it, but they have no idea who I am. When it first started, I was like, oh, this is kind of a bummer. Like, I wish my biggest thing is I like connecting with people, and I like the comments, especially. Like, I couldn't just go into the comments and be like, hey guys, like, what did you think of the video? Like, I just like talking to people. So it was definitely an adjustment having to just like sit back and be like, okay, this is the brand's channel, not like my channel. And that was definitely difficult at first, but now I love it. I think it's amazing because if you mess something up, they don't know that it's you because there's a lot of judgmental people watching YouTube, and they have a lot more knowledge than I do on most things that I create. I like to think I have a lot of knowledge, but once you like really get like you meet some fans that are really into whatever content you're creating for whatever brand, you're just like, whoa, they're a lot smarter than me, and I'm glad they have no idea who I am because they would just roast me all day. But it's different.
I'm guilty of that. That happened this weekend, and I'm not proud of it, but I'm just snarky. And the SEC Network posted a graphic on their Facebook page that was talking about the SEC men's basketball tournament, and that I think it was Mississippi State had beaten Kentucky or something. And they put the big graphic up, but the logo they had put on it was for the women's tournament, not the men's tournament. And so I pointed it out, and I was like, hey, you guys know you use the wrong logo. Use the women's logo.
You're the worst.
I'm that guy.
You're that guy.
And I was like,
always see it.
oh gosh. And that's on Facebook. My name and picture was next to that, and I'm not proud of that. But yeah, maybe I should take a self-audit occasionally. But has
Hey,
the response
sometimes.
to has the response to anything you've created like in that platform ever blown you away? Where you're just
Yeah.
like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, is this thing trending or whatever?
Yeah, there's been a ton of videos like at WWE that I've posted, and I'm just like, whoa, that has like 10 million views. Like things that like really, really take off. And I'm like, but the thing is, at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with me. Like it's the content. It's
Yeah.
WWE. It's like that's what's like taking off. But when I was working when I did Up Up Down Down, like I got to actually be on the channel, and we were like kind of morphed into personalities. Like I was playing video games. The Austin Creed, Xavier Woods, he's a wrestler. He became like my best friend. And he'd be like, "Oh, you could like come be on the channel and like play this scary game." And it was always like terrifying. And I remember we did I forget the name of the game, but it was a scary game, and this is the one that blew me away. Is like there was a ton of comments of me playing, and they were like, "Can we get more?" My nickname on the show was Oh Boy, and they were like, "Can we get more Oh Boy?" or like, "Can Oh Boy be on the show?" And I was just like, "Wait a second!" Like I really thought every single comment was gonna be like, "This girl is so annoying. Please get her off." And there were a couple of those, which was really sad, but most of them were like positive, and I was like, "Okay, this is really weird. I don't even know if I like this," but that was shocking and also amazing because I felt like I was actually like a part of something bigger, and it was really fun.
Yeah, that's a cool channel, and Xavier or Austin, whatever you want to call him, he
Yeah.
seems like such a cool guy too.
Oh my God,
Because
he's amazing.
I've been a WWE fan for many years, and I went
Yeah.
away for a long time, and then kind of came back about 4 or 5 years ago, right
Yep.
around the time that those guys got really popular, and he just seems like off air, he seems like he would be just the coolest guy to be around.
He's seriously like that whole, I mean, the New Day in general, they're just amazing human beings. And yeah, Austin is like a good friend of mine now, and like he's just like good human. And I mean, Big E and Kofi, I talk to them occasionally, but they're just like the nicest people. I can't even explain enough.
Is there something you worked on there or anywhere else that went the other way that maybe caused some controversy or maybe sprung up some really bad things that you're like, oh, maybe I'm glad my name's not on this now?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that happens all the time. It's more like it's not even anything that's like too bad. It's more like I put out information that might not have been as correct as I thought. And it's like
Yeah.
there's these fandoms now for everything, every show, and they're so deep into the show. They know everything about it. And when I start like creating these like editorial pieces, I'm kind of like trying to know all of the facts about the show, but even if I miss like the slightest thing, you can always expect 1,000 comments just being like, "Oh, they missed this one song in this one show," or they didn't mention this," and I just get roasted, straight up roasted. But the good news is nobody knows that it's me, so I kind of just sit back. I'm like, "Oh, whoever made that is doesn't know anything." So,
And then when they find out it's oh boy, it's going to be on the front page of TMZ, right?
yeah, exactly. No, oh, it's
But
horrible.
nothing that's like completely blown up in your face though. Just like
Not
minor
yet.
stuff like that.
Yeah, not
Oh,
yet.
don't say that. Don't say that.
It's bound to
Don't say
happen. I
that.
mean, come
No,
on.
I mean, well, I mean, okay. Can I tell a story about something
Yes.
that happened to me that haunts me to this day?
Oh, I
It's
love these
again
stories.
with bad information.
Yep.
I was doing voice tracking for a radio station in Memphis from Nashville. So I never even heard myself on this radio station. I would go into a studio here in Nashville and record 3 or 4 times a week, and I would be on the air. It would sound like I was live in Memphis every night from 7 to midnight on this station that played classic hit music from the 70s and 80s. And this was in 2004 probably. And there's a song by Mr. Mister called Kyrie, and it's spelled Kyrie.
Oh no.
And I called it Kyrie for at least 50 to 100 times while I was on that station, and nobody ever corrected me.
That's awesome.
And every time I hear that song to this day, and it's they pronounce it Kyrie in the song. I just didn't make the connection. I'm just reading what's on the screen because I'm actually not even hearing the songs when I'm recording this. I only hear like the first 15 seconds of it, right? But I know the song. It was a huge hit, and I don't know why that escaped me for so long, and I never made the connection that that's what song it was.
That's
And
brutal.
every time I hear that song to this day, it just makes me cringe thinking
Yep.
there are people in Memphis who still probably hear that song too and think, God, that idiot idiot DJ kept saying Kyrie on my favorite radio station for years or for months. It was, probably several months I was on there. That still haunts me. So I get it.
Horrible.
I totally get it.
That's horrible. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's probably harder in radio because you're just like kind of talking, and I know, like, I'm assuming, most times it's live, but maybe not.
Most of the time. Well,
Yeah.
in the old days, not so much anymore. It's mostly
True.
recorded now. Yeah.
True, but that's even scarier. It's like I don't know how people do anything live because I would absolutely mess something up. I mean, even in our podcast, the other day I went on an epic rant about how epilogues don't belong in books, and I was like, why not just start with chapter 1? And Erica was like, are you talking about a prologue? And I like took my headphones off. I was like, oh my goodness, this is so bad. I'm so glad this isn't live. I mean, I'm gonna leave it in, but still.
There's a thrill to broadcasting something live, though, and that's something that I'm learning as I'm becoming a video editor is the art of post-production, because I've never had to deal with it working in radio. It's always been pre-production, it's out there, and then it's gone, and you'll never see it again or never hear it again. And I've always thought, man, post-production just seems so tedious and just, ugh. Like, there's so many times you have to do the same thing over and over and edit. And I prefer to operate without that safety net and
Wow.
to just go out there. And if you mess up, it's
nope.
hopefully forgotten and not people remembering that I mispronounced the name of that song so many times.
Yeah, no, I did live TV when I first started at WWE. I did a lot of live TV, and I was on blood pressure medication. That's how like stressed I was at 24
I
years
get it.
old. Yeah, and it was like I did the Raw pre-show, and actually I got a good story for that one. One time I messed up a graphic and it was live, and instead of going to the graphic, we went to black, and dead air is like the absolute worst thing that can happen on live TV.
Yep.
That was not a good day for me and did not end well for me.
Did you hear from Vince on that one?
I didn't hear from Vince. I think Vince like talked to the director of the pre-show, and then I heard from him. So I never want to hear from Vince. That's for sure.
No.
There's nothing scarier than hearing that on the headset. Like, Vince wants to talk to you. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I can. Did you ever have one of those meetings, or
No.
was that?
Nope, I have
Good.
not. I'm very lucky.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've heard too many things about how those have gone wrong. Yeah, totally. And, and I can attest to this, wrestling fans, you talk about the obsessive fans, like we remember everything that happened ever. And so if there's a wrong graphic, we will point it out.
Oh yeah, all the time, every time.
Yeah, it can be a brutal community, definitely.
It's brutal
okay.
and also fun.
Yeah, it is, and I enjoy being a part of it, and as in what little way that I have. I don't know that I would ever want to work in it, just because it would not want to say ruin the magic, because I understand what it is, and that it is a production that doesn't bother me, and I love kind of knowing what's behind the scenes. But what got me was. When I worked in sports, and I thought I always want to work in sports, and then when I worked in sports, it was like, I don't enjoy sports anymore. Like when I left, I ran the sports radio station in Huntsville, Alabama for 4.5 years. And when I left that radio job, I didn't watch sports for about a year. I had to take like a sabbatical, if you will. I just kind of had to wean myself off of it cold turkey, and just be like, I can't watch it because I'm just completely jaded by it all.
I totally get
because
that.
once it becomes your job, it's just not fun anymore.
It's so true. I totally get that, because I love sports. I'm a big sports fan. I love baseball more than anything. And when I was young, like my dream job was always like, I want to work for the Chicago Cubs. I want to like sit in center field with a camera and have a season ticket to watch the Cubs and just be so happy and live my best life. But working in sports, like WWE is a sport, and I don't care what anybody else says. And I just feel like after that, it is 100%. After that, I was like, I don't know. I need a break from that type of just having like a live audience type feel. So it's been good. I mean, I ended up at my dream job now, so it all worked out.
And you don't have to talk about that if you don't want to. If you do, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I'll leave the floor open to you on that one.
Yeah. No, I work at Nickelodeon now, and I mean that is literally why I started in TV. Like I was telling you how I love stories. I love listening to my grandpa's stories. But the only, like, I didn't watch TV as a kid. I was mostly like outside or at my neighbor's house. Like, we were always riding bikes, going on an adventure. I just wanted to go on an adventure. But when we did watch TV, we only watched Nickelodeon, and it was always like Guts or even like the
Oh
movies. Like,
yeah.
you know how people watch Disney movies? Like, I've never
Yeah.
seen The Lion King or anything. I've only watched Nickelodeon movies. And when I say that, people are like, that's not a thing. And I'm like, Harriet the Spy. I have my orange
Harriet the
teeth.
Spy. Yep.
Rugrats in Paris, come at me. So yeah, I mean, it's what got me, like my exploration mind going, and it's why I loved adventuring so much. And me and my best friend Dustin, as kids, we did, we watched Nickelodeon, and then we'd like make movies or like music videos, like you said, and that's why I started. And now to come full circle in my career is like, I'm like, dang, I'm 29 years old. Like, this is like all I've ever wanted. And it feels really good to be in this position for sure.
That's awesome. And hopefully it doesn't, I mean, especially with Nick, though, it's a little different because it's
Yeah.
all, it is storytelling, and that's what your passion is. And you're in that world, and part of that, it's not like sports where it has to happen every night. And
Yeah.
it's like, you do 160 baseball games and you're like, oh, there's two more, it's
Exactly.
like,
Exactly.
thank God there's only two more games. I mean, I would root against the local team so that they wouldn't make the playoffs because I wanted the season to be over. And I'm
Yep.
like, this is how I know that it's bad, because I'm a sports fan. I should want my teams to do well, but I'm just like, get this off my plate.
I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think I may have already asked you this one. What is the thing that you have worked on that you are the most proud of?
Ooh, that's
Like,
a really good question.
is there one thing that you can just go, ooh, I did that?
There's just one. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm definitely just proud of the fact that I even made a career out of what I'm doing, because
Yeah.
going to school, like the amount of people that are just like, wait, you want to be a video producer? Or like, when I was a kid, I was like, I want to be a director, like a film director. And the amount of times I heard like, that's not reasonable is uncountable. And
Yeah.
even in high school, like I hated school. I hated going to school. I hated math. I hated all of that. Like I just wasn't what I was passionate about. So I didn't do well in high school. But when it came down to video projects, I was like, I got this. Like, I'm going to make a music video. I'm going to like rap a song and then make a music video to that, and just go all out. And I remember I had one teacher. I did a project about Vietnam, and I like filmed my friends as like they were like they were like running around as soldiers, and like I made it super cinematic. And she pulled me aside and she was like, you're really good at this. And I was like, oh, thank you. And she was like, yeah, you're gonna be fine. And it was like the first teacher to ever tell me that like I was talented at anything.
That's awesome.
And I was like, wow, there's like, I can actually like do this and make a career out of it. And I think like, honestly, that's what I'm most proud of. The fact that I didn't listen to people just be like, hey, there's no work in video, instead of just, I would have just like quit, but I didn't. I just kept going, and I was like, no, I'm going to make this a thing. And it paid off.
And that teacher changed your life.
100%, because I mean, I went to a school that had nothing to do with video production. Like nowadays there's high schools, they have like you can at least like join a class that has video production in it, which is so
Yeah.
cool. I wish more schools did that. But to just hear somebody that wasn't like a family member to say like, hey, you're talented, was huge. And I'll never forget that. I mean, I even reached out to her recently, and I was just like, you are like the reason why I'm still in video production. So thank you. Like it's amazing what like one person can do to change your life forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So true.
I don't think I can't recall anybody, because when I was in high school, I didn't have really all the aspirations to be in electronic media. I thought that journalism was my future.
Yeah.
And so I did the high school newspaper, and that was about as close to that as you could get in the mid 90s. And there had been no interest at all in creating the high school paper. And I went to a really small private school. I mean, there were only, in the high school 9 through 12, there were probably only 180, 200 kids. I mean, it was
Wow.
a tiny little school. And but there was a journalism class, in air quotes, if you're listening, that took place every day in seventh period, and it wound up becoming like the English teacher's planning period. She didn't teach anything. It was just like, we're going to put together a newspaper when we want to.
I love
And
that.
it became like a study hall for most people, and I'm the only one that was like, wait a minute, I want to do this
Yeah.
later in life, so I need to be working on this. And I just took the initiative to do one myself. I wrote and I assembled and I got the thing printed all by myself, distributed it all by myself, even though I think I made in the little credits section, it was like writer Zach Bennett, producer Zach Bennett, editor Zach Bennett, publisher Zach, just to kind of drive the knife into my
That's
classmates.
awesome.
It's like, you didn't do this. I did it. I did the whole thing.
Yeah,
But that was
you
about
were
as close as I could get in high school.
you were there at such an interesting time too, because you said you were in the high school in the 90s. Is that what you said?
I graduated in 99, yeah.
Wow, that first of all, that's awesome. I'm jealous because I always wonder what it's like to be in a time when like cell phones were not a big thing. But yeah, like that had to be interesting for you because when you look back at it now, like are there things that like you wish you did, like knowing where media went, where it is like now? Are there things that you wish like you could have like changed the wheel on?
Gosh, you mean personally or just like overall, like something that
Like because
I
when
would have
I think
thought of?
Yeah, I wish like when I think about it, like now YouTube is so big, and when it first
Yeah.
started, it wasn't like a huge thing. Like I wish I had took advantage of that in 2006 and like made
Yeah.
vlogs and like cool stuff like that. I'm like, dang, I could have been a millionaire, one of these YouTube millionaires, and just living my
Well, there
life.
was there was no outlet for self-publishing anything in the
Right.
90s. When, like I said, I'm thankful that we didn't have social media at that time because I would have made a fool of myself and
Yeah.
living in that moment. But there was no way to put it out there. And that's why I thought, I want to work in journalism because my aunt was a writer and she wrote for trade magazines and things like that. And so I was mentored by her a little bit, but then I realized I don't really want to be a writer per se. And my dad was on the radio when I
Oh
was, or
wow.
before I was born. And so I kind of had the radio gene in me, if you will. And me and my dad would talk about it all the time. But there was a barrier to entry. I mean, you could only be where things were already established. There was no way to
True.
self-publish or just to put anything out there.
Yeah,
Um,
that's interesting.
so so there was no outlet. You could create all you wanted to, but nobody would ever see it except for you, right? I mean, the
Right.
the best we didn't have Photoshop. We maybe a very early incarnation of Photoshop, but it was just the internet was new, and I actually had okay. Let me start over. There was self-publishing when I was in high school, and it was the internet, but you had to have a web page because there was no social media. And this is a little embarrassing, but this brings it full circle on the Nick thing.
Yep.
I had a website that was in 1995 or 6, very early in the internet, that was a fan page for a Nickelodeon show called The Secret World of Alex Mack,
Oh, it's such a good
which
show.
to this day remains one of my favorite shows ever.
Oh, that's
And
good.
it was partly because I had a major crush on the star of the show, but partly because it was just a really good show. I mean,
So
especially for
good.
its time with the special effects and
Yep.
the
Yep.
storytelling. And you've got this girl who is a teenager. She's my age, so I identified with her there. She's a teenager who is doused with a chemical and now has these superpowers. She can levitate things, she can turn into liquid, and
No.
every episode she's evading the authorities. And there'd be like one episode where she would evade the authorities and another episode where she would do something that like a teenager would normally do, except she's got these supernatural abilities now.
Yes.
And such a great show. But I had a website that was devoted to the show. It was like an episode guide. There was like a message board on it. And there was a lot of popularity even around that because there weren't that many fan sites for shows
Did you have
in
to
the
pay
mid
for that
90s.
site?
To pay for what?
Did you
The
have to
right
pay
to
for
do it?
like the URL, like the website?
No, I used like my mom and dad had signed up for a local internet service provider that offered us free web pages. And
Nice.
so I just used that. So it was just whatever the local ISP was here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
That's so cool.
And it got really popular and TV Guide interviewed me about it.
Wait, what? Actually?
Yeah. And I don't know that it ever published, or if it did, maybe it was even on tvguide.com. Again, this was mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
But a reporter from TV Guide called and talked to me about it on the phone. And I got one of the creator of the show contacted me, and we would talk about stuff, and I'm like
Whoa.
14, 15-year-old kid, but they told me things about like stories that were coming up on the show, and we would publish like
What?
little rumors and things, and it kind of had an inside track. Yeah,
That's
so
the
that was
coolest
my
thing
outlet.
ever. That is so
That was
cool.
my outlet in the mid 90s. And so, yeah, so I have that show, the DVD set of that show still today.
I wonder if
Because
your
it's just a
website
great
still
show.
exists.
No, the website is long gone.
Space Jam
I
still
think
has
that,
it.
yeah, but I think the internet service provider went out of business. And I think actually at one time I moved it over to Prodigy because their servers were faster. And now
Yeah.
Prodigy's long gone. I don't even know if you know what Prodigy is or
No.
was.
Do you remember
Prodigy,
LimeWire?
I do.
Yeah,
But
that's the only thing I know.
Prodigy, okay, Prodigy was like AOL before AOL. It was like the first service that
Oh.
you could subscribe to and log on, and they had it was like a walled garden. They had their own news pages and their own message boards and stuff. But it was not really internet. It was like an intranet. You would just log in and connect with people. And this was
Oh, okay.
1994, 95, like when modems were just barely a thing.
That is so cool.
So that's my outlet, and I'm glad that you that I remembered that when I'm talking to you, because you work for Nickelodeon now, and so I have that connection there with you.
It just goes full circle. It always like manages to come back around, I swear.
That's why when you left for Nickelodeon, and I said, hey, if you can get Secret World of Alex Mack back on the air, like a reunion special, then I'll let you go. I think I told
That
you
would be
when you
so neat.
left. Okay, so walk me through your process with either what you're doing professionally or just something that you do for a hobby, from conception to completion. Like, how do you develop something in your mind and go, okay, this is what I want to do, and I got to go do it now? Like, where does that spark start?
Yeah, I could talk about I started a YouTube channel a couple years ago called UVentureTV. So it's like the letter U and then Venture TV. I'm like really into hiking and just adventuring and like exploring. And I had this idea where I kind of wanted to do my own National Geographic type thing, or just make little documentaries about hiking or just about getting outside. So when I started working on that project, I was just like so into it because I was hiking all the time, and I was like, dang, I just want so many people to like see the cool adventures that I get to go on. Like, how do I get that work out there? So what I just like, I was like, what, I'm just going to make a YouTube channel. So I made a YouTube channel, and I was like, okay, now I need content for the YouTube channel. And I developed this idea to do, you're familiar with New Hampshire a little bit, but in New Hampshire, there's 48 4,000 foot mountains. It's like, so they call it the 48 4,000 footers. And I was part of a Facebook group of people that are trying to hike all 48. That's me being one of them. And I was like, there's some really cool stories of just people finishing the 48, trying to finish the 48, or just like having a connection with a mountain. And I was like, I feel like I can do little documentaries about this. So I just kind of went out there and started filming. And my friend Maria, who I do the podcast with, she's Latinx, and she like grew up in Miami, and she's like, being a Latina, we never like went hiking or like went outside. Like, it just wasn't like part of like what we did. And I was like, okay, so you've never hiked a mountain. I was like, this could be a cool story. So I got her to hike Mount Monadnock first. She loved it. She was like, this is so much fun. So I was like, okay, I'm taking you to a 4,000 footer. I was like, this is a little bit, big leagues, but you'll be fine. And she's like, all right, I'll figure it out. So I brought my camera, and I shot a bunch of footage of her hiking, and it was like really funny and like adorable. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to like interview you and just like make a video out of this. And we did like a sit down interview. I asked her a bunch of questions, and she was just crushed it on the camera. And I was like, all right, this could be a really neat series of just like picking a different mountain and finding somebody that has a cool story about that mountain, and just like do 48 of these mini documentaries. And I've only done 2 so far, but I really want to get back out there this summer and like create some more. But it's so much fun. Like, my whole thing is, my favorite thing about what I do is editing. Like, I love video editing. Like, that's how I started. It's just like, to me, the story comes together when you sit down and you cut it. Like, you can film a bunch of stuff, but the story's not there. It's like, it all comes together when you edit it. So for me, like, that was my favorite part about it, was just like putting these stories together and just like editing a bunch of mini documentaries, for sure.
That's so cool. I
Yeah, it
love
was
the
really fun.
concept too.
Thank you.
And is that available on YouTube now? Can we see those?
Yeah, it's on UVenture TV. I think I have it under, and it's called A Date with 48.
And we'll put that in the show notes and
Oh,
put
awesome.
links there
Thank
for
you.
people to look at that, because I definitely want to watch that. I didn't know that existed, so
Thanks. Yeah,
I'm gonna go watch that.
I did one on like my own journey of when I hiked the they're called the bonds. There's like three of them. So I
Yeah.
did like a little intro video, like my video of that, and then Maria hiked Mount Musalak, so she has her story up there too.
So
Super fun.
you're shooting this yourself,
Yeah.
like with
Yep.
selfie cam, or you're like, oh, yeah, I was thinking you were going like up with her, hiking with
Oh
her,
yeah. Yeah, I
and
was.
okay, so that's okay. So now I
Yep.
got you. I'll have to
Yeah.
watch. I'll just need to,
Yeah.
rather than ask, I'll just go watch after we get done here.
I'll send it to
Um,
you.
s- so okay, cool, yeah. So when you create something from scratch and you edit it and you put it out there, you can be your own worst critic, right? So when
Oh.
it's done, you look back and go, oh my gosh, I could have done this and that and this and
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
What is the difference between doing that, self-publishing something,
Hmm.
and being your own worst critic versus working in a professional environment where you have to pass it up to another producer or whatever,
Yeah.
an executive producer who looks at it and maybe point that thing out to you, and you're like, oh, thank you for doing that. So,
Hmm.
what is the creative process like for you there?
What I always say is it's a blessing and a curse. Being able to just like do your own thing and you're not worrying about approvals from anybody is so freeing, but also, like you said, it's a little bit scary because you're not getting those eyes on it that are going to be like, "Hey, this thing sucked," or "Hey, maybe like try it this way." So I like to send my stuff to people in general and just like get their opinion on it. But I don't have like that approval process. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's amazing and I love it because at the end of the day, I get to say what I like. But the thing is, like, art is so subjective, are so subjective. And you could spend an entire week editing something that you're like the most passionate about, and you're like, this is the best thing I've ever created. I'm so excited about it. I can't wait to show it to like my boss. And you send it to that person who has a completely different perspective than you. And they're just like, hey, I didn't like this music. Change the music, which is like the worst note any editor could ever get. Because, when you change music, you have to change the entire edit. It's like, okay, it
yep.
doesn't go to the music anymore. So, I mean, you could spend all week just loving this thing that you create, and one person can give you that one note, and all of a sudden you don't like your project anymore. So,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like you change the music and you make that edit, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, no, this is a lot better. So it's just like it's so hot and cold. I personally love just being able to like at the end of the day be like, okay, this is my project. I'm happy with like how I did it and being able to post it. But often like I love getting the feedback, and I love just sending it to my friends and being like, tell me what to do different, like help me. It really does. It makes a huge difference.
And so you kind of have to separate your pride from your direction sometimes.
Always like that. I mean, especially in my career, like that was like the hardest pill to swallow when I first started actually
Yeah.
like doing work. You leave college and you're like, oh, I do these things that I love, and the first time you get a note, you're just like, whoa, like it's not just one note, it's usually a paragraph of things that you have to fix. I mean, like WWE, we always used to cut like these video packages. Like, when you watch a show and before it, there's like this epic video package with music and like people fighting, and it like pumps you up, and they're always so good. And when I first started, like, there's really like a formula to it. And it was like, I didn't know what it was. So the first time I got like a page of notes, I was like, wow, I suck at my job. That was the first thing I thought was like, I'm bad at this. Like, how can I do this? Like, all these notes, and then you start to realize it's like, no, there's just a way of doing it that's better than how you do it. It's not that you suck, you just have to learn a new way of doing it. And as you move forward, you get better, and the notes become less and less, and you start to feel a lot better about yourself.
Yeah, maybe that's a little bit where you and I have different experiences, because I'm just now getting into the video editing thing.
Ooh.
It wasn't something that I pursued. It just kind of happened at Ramsey, which
Nice.
I love it, and I love doing it, but I am such a novice. Like at this point, I'm just still trying to learn how Premiere works, and
Yep.
I'm figuring out Premiere, by the way, is the video editing software for to pull back on the lingo there, but I'm just figuring out how that works, and and I'm tweaking and I'm watching other YouTube videos to kind of learn tricks and how to do it. And so I've gotten really good feedback from people, but then I watch some of my coworkers and my teammates, the stuff they create, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I really suck at
You
this.
can't compare yourself. That's like the one
No,
thing I learned. Don't
I
compare
don't,
yourself.
but I'm more open to criticism at this point because I'm learning and it's so new to me that if somebody can show me a better way to do something, I am totally open to it. But
Yep.
at the same time, when I was working in radio and I would have someone who hadn't been in the business as long as I had directing me on something radio wise, I'm just like, yeah, and there's that, I understand that dent to your ego, but ultimately they're the boss and they get to
Exactly.
decide. But
Yep.
yeah, that part's not much fun.
I mean, yeah, I've been editing for like 10, actually more than 10 years now. And there's still things that like I'll be talking to my friend and they'll just be like, you can just do this. It's like way quicker. And I'll just like, it'll blow my mind. I'm like, you just saved me an hour of work just telling me that one thing. And I'm just like, please give me all of your shortcuts. Like, we all know something that the other person doesn't. And like, I love when
Yeah.
people give me like new tricks and stuff. It's the best.
Favorite memory of working at WWE?
Oh boy, there's like a million.
I can tell you
Honestly,
really liked that job.
I did. I loved when I worked for Up Up Down Down. That was like one of the best jobs I ever had. I don't just working with like Austin in general was always a lot of fun. But being able to like go to video gaming conventions and like I think it's always like every good memory that I have has to do with just like meeting people. Like I love strangers and I love talking to people. So every like good memory is like, oh, I was at a video gaming convention and I like talked to some stranger for an hour. Like those are like the memories that I love the most. So
Favorite
random.
favorite Nickelodeon show of all time?
Oh, of all time, Rugrats.
Rugrats. That was a little bit after my time. I
That
mean,
was
it was
my
on, but I guess mine. Well, aside from Alex Mack, which I was just completely obsessive over. Like I loved, because I grew up in the '80s, and so there was Double Dare and
oh the best.
Finders Keepers,
Finder.
and
Every time I say Finders Keepers, nobody knows what that is. I'm so glad
you
you
know
just
what it
said that.
is?
Yes, when they would go in that fake house and have to like find all the stuff. That was like one of my
Yes.
favorite shows. I wanted to be on
I
it so bad.
loved that show, and they
Yeah.
had growing up an only child kind of sucked. I mean, it gave
Oh,
me a lot of time to watch TV, but they had a Finders Keepers board game that
did they?
came out, and
I
it
gotta look
was
that
they
up.
just had these little cardboard boxes that were each of the rooms, and you would hide things in the cardboard boxes and play with all your family or your friends or whatever. And we got me
Ooh.
the board game, but I didn't have any brothers or sisters to play it with, so
Oh.
it was kind of lame. And I tried to play it with my friend next door; he didn't care about it. But they
Oh.
had a thing where you could a mail-in order pre-internet, because we're talking like 1988 here,
Nice.
where you could mail in and order the t-shirt that the kids wore on the show, and they always wore with the Finders Keepers logo on the shirt. And so my mom bought me one, and everywhere I wore it, people, like especially kids, would come up to me and go, "Were you on that show? How'd you get the t-shirt?" And I was like, "No, I just bought it in the mail. Where can I get one? Where can I get one?" So I
I hope you
remember
still
that
have
from,
it.
I think when I was up in Maine on vacation, and I remember being on the beach in Maine, and I just had this swarm of kids. There were like these 5 or 6 other kids playing over there on the beach, and they all saw that shirt and ran over to me, and I'm like, "What is going on?" And they just wanted to know if I had been on that show, and
That's
so
so good.
I should have lied to them. I should have told them that I had, but
Do you still have the shirt?
oh gosh, no, it
Oh,
probably
it'd
got
probably be
thrown
worth
away.
money.
It probably, you know what? It might. I'll have to check when I go back to my mom's house because she
It
saved
might.
so much of my stuff. She might have, yeah.
That would be
But I
amazing.
remember,
I used to like when I would play double or when I would watch not Double Dare, Guts. Like Guts was one of my
oh
favorites.
yeah,
I used to take an orange and I would like cut it and I would like eat I would eat the orange and keep the peel in my mouth and pretend that it was a mouth guard and I would like run and jump over like all the couches and I'd be like, I'm on Guts.
yes. Guts was like American Gladiators for kids. It was so awesome. I
Yes.
love that show, and of course we would. Without talking about Nickelodeon, without talking about the Legends of the Hidden Temple, and you're just like, it's 3 pieces. It's a silver monkey. But how can you not figure this out?
I know I raged a lot for that. So true.
Kristin, it has been so much fun having you on. Thank you for coming on. I
Thanks
certainly
for having me.
appreciate it, and it's just been a blast getting to talk to you and learn a little bit about your process and your history. And thank you so much for being a part of Media Makers.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for you to come to New Hampshire again. We can definitely get some donuts because I know you love donuts.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to go to that place in Maine that I went to. It was called Lovebirds.
Yes.
In Kittery.
I'm in. Done.
We went there. All right.
Awesome.
We'll make plans this fall when I'm back up there.
Perfect.
Thanks again for listening to Media Makers or watching it if you're on YouTube. I certainly appreciate it. I'm Zach Bennett, and this has been a very fun episode. It's the first person that I talked to that I didn't really know all that well beforehand, and so I got to learn a lot about Kristin and spend some time talking to her, and I can't wait to be better friends with her as we go on down the line. But make sure you subscribe, like us on YouTube, give us the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. I certainly appreciate it. I want to help this thing grow so more and more people will hear these amazing creators and what drives them to continue to create. Our next episode, I haven't nailed down the guest yet. As usual, it seems like I can't preview ever on Media Makers because I don't know who's coming up next. But I have some ideas, and no matter who I get to record first, it's going to be a good one. I guarantee you. If you've listened to Media Makers and you listen to this all the way through, you're definitely going to enjoy my next episode as well. So thanks again for watching or listening. Leave us those reviews, and I'll see you next time on Media Makers with Zach Bennett.